What's up, y'all? Marcus Frazier from Teachable Tuesdays here to motivate you, encourage you, and inspire you to be a better you. Thank you for joining me today. Greatly appreciate it. As always, if you could, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, make sure you stay up to date with all of my future Teachable Tuesdays videos. I was thinking about something this morning when I woke up, right? When it comes to courting and relationships, just overall in general, romantic relationships, that is, I think there's some very important fundamental questions that you need to ask. I think that's one of the biggest lessons within courting that I've learned over the years. And I decided to take things to a little bit of an older audience, somewhat. Normally I talk about all age groups on this channel and I kind of make it general, but I want to make it to a little bit more of my slightly more mature audience, only because I think as you get older, dating becomes a bit more crucial than when you're younger. You know, when you're a teenager, like late teens, early 20s, I think it's one of those things where you can kind of just experiment with certain things and see and so on and so forth, right? But as you get older, you get a bit more serious, right? Most people get a bit more serious when it comes to dating, especially after the age of 25, or at least they have the idea to, because obviously today in modern day dating, everybody's kind of just doing what they want to do and just winging it, right? So here are 5 important questions that I think that everyone should ask if they are 25 and older. Now, keep in mind that question number 1 and question number 5 will depend on certain circumstances, but nonetheless, it can still be asked depending on the nature of who you're involved with, so on and so forth. So I'm gonna start with number 1, probably the most important one in my opinion, but it depends on where you're at. And that question is, are you a believer / what is your faith, or what is your walk in Christ look like? Are you a believer / what does your walk in Christ look like? And the reason why I think that's a very important aspect to ask is because God, in my personal opinion, should be number 1 above all things, right? Now, it depends on if you're a believer. If you're not a believer, if neither one of you guys are believers, then obviously you can skip question number 1. But I think especially if you are a believer, you have to know, is the other person's walk with Christ just as important as yours? And before you even ask that question, ask yourself, is your walk with Christ important? Because you got to remember, he is the firm foundation. He should be the center of everything. And if he's not, you need to make him as such, because he is the one that will sustain relationships. He's the one that will hold the glue together when times get hard. He is the glue that holds everything together when times get hard. I remember, and I talked about this analogy before on this channel, my frat brother, Michael Taru, shout out to him. He said that there's one person on the end of the pyramid, your significant other at the end of the pyramid, and God is at the top. The closer you guys get to God, the closer you guys will get together. And let me tell you something. After my previous relationship, I find that to be very true indeed. So what does their walk with Christ look like / are they a believer? That's very important. If you're a believer and they're not, it's not going to work out. I know sometimes we like to say, oh, well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. You want to keep things in mind that the Bible does talk about not being unequally yoked, right? What does that mean? That means you guys should be on one accord. And if you're not on one accord from the start, I'm not saying it can't change, but it's tough to change. So that's just my personal thought on that. Number 2, I think this is very important after that question, right? Depending on the circumstances again. But do you want kids? Do you want kids? I cannot stress, oh my gosh, guys, I cannot stress how important that question is, depending on if you want kids or not, because you guys have to line up with this question. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't want kids and that individual does, or vice versa, you might as well not take it any further. I remember there was a woman a couple years ago that lived in Maryland, went on a date with her. Everything was amazing. It was excellent. This person checked off a lot of boxes early on. And I was like, okay, I can see things going, but here's the problem. She didn't want kids. And at first we kept flirting with the idea. We were flirting with each other. And then one day we just sat on the phone and was like, you know what? Let's stop playing with the idea, knowing darn well this ain't gonna go nowhere, because we don't want, whoa, she didn't want kids. I wanted kids. She didn't want any kids. Like she said, I've always felt that way and that's not gonna change. She told me from the jump she didn't want kids. And Again, at first I was just like, okay, well, it wasn't so much of a we'll see. And it's funny because I had a lot of people that told me, well, she'll change her mind for the right man and so on and so forth. And maybe that's a possibility, but there's also the possibility that she really genuinely might not want kids. The whole change in the mindset, we kind of got to get out of that. You got to believe what people tell you the first time, right? Because it's either she don't want kids or he don't want kids with you, or they really don't want kids at all. A lot of times, it's one or the other. When somebody says they won't do something, it's because they won't do it with you, or they really genuinely don't want to do it. And I think you should always take the second one, even if the first one is true. Because if they wanted it bad enough, regardless with you or not, they would do it. So be on the same page with that. Oh my gosh, I cannot stress that enough, right? Like me, I want kids. I want at least one, 2 max. Definitely, I really want 2, but I will compromise for 1 if I meet a woman that only wants 1 kid. So yeah, very important. Please keep that in mind. The third important question that you should ask if you're 25 and over is, where are you trying to go in the future? What are your future plans? What is your future vision, right? Now, a lot of times, most people will tell ladies they should ask a man this question, but I think men should ask a lady this question too. And the reason being is because it's just as important for a woman to have ambition as it is for a man to have ambition. Now, granted, when it comes to how much money and stuff like that somebody makes, men will typically care a lot less than that than women will, because women err on the side of provision and protection, right? And financial matters do, to some degree, tie into that. As opposed to us, we rely more on peace from a woman, right? Is she peaceful? Can she turn a house into a home? Can she be good for my future family, right? The future family that we want to create together. That's what men think about. So men and women, they are similar things they think about when it comes to courting, but they are also different things as well. But yeah, I think it's just as important for both of y'all to know where y'all want to go, what you guys want to do, because ultimately you got to remember, marriage is teamwork, right? Marriage is for sure teamwork. Whatever your dreams are, whatever you believe in, goals that you want to get to, as long as it's within things that we both agree with and things that are morally correct, we're going to support each other, right? We're going to be there for each other. The support might not even be from a financial standpoint. It just might be from the cheerleader on the sideline, which, hey, we all need one of those. We all should be one of those, right? So I think that's important, understanding, what are your plans for the future, right? And you also got to see if your plans properly line up with theirs and vice versa, because if they don't, not saying that it won't work, because y'all could be going in 2 different directions for sure, but also plans can involve location. What if you plan on moving somewhere that they don't want to move, or vice versa? I know I'm at a point right now where I've kind of come to realize that, and I'm not saying this is a definite, but based on what's happened recently and based on how I'm planning for my future, and the fact that I'm planning on moving at some point, I probably should not date, or at least be very cautious of dating women that live in my area, unless they plan on going where I'm trying to go, right? So you want to be very mindful of that. And I say that because I don't want to string anything along, but I also say that with an asterisk because, it's not a guarantee that I'm going to leave right away, but I do know at some point I am going to leave Orlando. Even though I love it here, love it, I have higher plans for higher places. So yeah, make sure you ask that question. Question number 4. What are your family values / how do you see family? And I could do a whole video on this, so I'm gonna really, please forgive me. I'm gonna try my best to make this short. I say this one is important because you have to understand that family values mean a lot. Are you a family man? Are you a family woman? Are you not? What is your history with your family? And the reason why I say your history with your family is so important is because that can tie into good values, good things based on how they grew up or how you grew up. Or it could be not so good things because maybe you had issues with your family, and that is trauma. And that can lead to other things that you have to talk about. Now, I'm not saying that just because someone who's been through family trauma that you should just dismiss them. No, let's go ahead and get that out the way now. I think it's very important to understand where the person is coming from, but also understand that it will play a part on certain things and how they view family. I've dated women who've had great relationships with family. I've courted women who did not have great relationships with family. And that just because they didn't have a great relationship with their family didn't mean we didn't have a great relationship or a great outlook on what we wanted for a potential family in the future if it went further, right? So you do want to ask that question just to get a feel for things, because regardless if you guys want to have children together in the future or not, if you go far enough, you still are building a family. When you get married, you are a family. Even if you don't want any kids, it's still, how are you guys going to view family with each other, and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. And then I think question number 5, which also similar to question number 1, will just kind of depend on where you're at. Well, to some degree. Question number 5 that you should ask someone is, where do you plan on living in the future? Especially if you guys are, now I'm a branch this one of 2 ways. So if you guys are local, right, I think it's important to ask that question so you can know which direction to go. And I'm not saying you're going to ask on the first date, but you definitely should ask that as soon as possible, right? Because like I said, given my situation, there's another state in mind that I plan on moving to in the near future. So if a woman were to ask me that, I would be straight up with them and let them know, hey, nothing is set in stone, but my plan is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, all that good stuff, right? And from there, she would have to decide based on the potential, okay, is this guy worth getting with or not? Now, granted, some people might argue and say, Marcus, you probably shouldn't do that because you can mess up your chances. But I also want to be straightforward just in case things do happen. And again, in my case, I don't have to bring it up on the first date. It could be something casual. But if it is a situation like, let's just say you meet a man or meet a woman, but you are definite on, for sure, relocating, then that's something that you have to discuss. Now, I'm going to branch it the other way. Let's say you guys are distant, right? And first of all, I don't necessarily recommend long distance relationships. I think they can be challenging, although some people have made it work. And if it works for you, good for you. You do that junk and you make it work however possible. I just personally can't do it. I've tried it twice. Yes, I've tried it actually 3 times. Just doesn't work for me, right? But if you guys are long distance, you definitely need to talk about relocation in terms of, in general, like, would you consider moving? Let's say, I like one time I was dating someone in California. She lived in Pasadena. And I was here in Orlando. That was one of my main questions. Like, would you ever consider moving to the East Coast? And I asked her what states. And, she asked me, would I consider moving to the West Coast? And of course, at the time I hadn't visited yet. So I was like, well, I'd like to visit to see, which I ended up visiting. And funny enough, me and the person don't really communicate anymore. But yet now I want to move out there. You know what I'm saying? For me personally, because I went out there and loved it. So these are all things that you have to consider. And that's very important because it can't be long distance forever, right? In that situation, somebody got to move. All right, sorry about that. I didn't get silent on purpose. Well, I did get silent on purpose. It was because my Nike app went off, so just wanted to make sure everything was still good with that. But anyways, yeah. So I think those are my 5 important questions that you should ask if you are 25 and older. Some people might say you should ask them when you're 30 and over, depending on how you look at dating. I think for me, it's important to ask those questions as soon as possible. Again, they don't necessarily have to be the first date with all of them, but most of them, especially with the first 3, yeah, definitely ask within the first or second date, That way you can get a feel for what's going on. And the purpose of these questions is to know, are there certain very, very important elements that you guys align on? And if you don't, you might not be able to take it any further than that. And that's perfectly fine. That's okay. That's the purpose of dating/courting. It's to get to, well, really dating per se. It is to figure out if you guys are in alignment, to figure out if you guys are on the same page with important aspects so you can take it to the next level, which is courting when the time is right. All right? Marcus Frazier from Teachable Tuesdays, going to motivate you, encourage you, and inspire you to be a better you. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.